Hello and welcome. My name is Samir Singhani. In this video, we're going to walk you through a wedding timeline so that way you have the ability to organize your main wedding day. Or as part of this, we're also going to provide you a PDF document that's going to provide you a sample timeline for a typical Indian wedding, followed by a reception. But then also the focus really around this is to make sure that your wedding photographer has the ability to get the images that they need, while this outline is also going to provide a great structure for you to work with so that way you can coordinate your vendors, your family members, your bridal parties, tell them exactly what time and generally what time frame to be where and when, so that way we can make sure that we get the right photos and will maximize coverage for the day. Okay, so we're going to provide you a resource guide as part of this video. And then also we're going to walk you through it in this specific video. I'm going to be the one to guide you on how to think about structuring your day and your timeline. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Each of you guys will get a copy of what we call our Hindu wedding ceremonial guide. And this is a PDF document that's going to be made available to you as a free resource as a thank you for being one of our leads or one of our clients. And generally speaking, what I'm going to do in this guide is provide you also some of the customs and the rituals that we're going to follow. We'll make sure that you guys have the right education so that you know what to expect, what to bring with you, and just be able to have a much smoother transition between all the different key moments, especially with an Indian wedding, as chaotic as it can get. So this guy's going to help prepare you for that. Now we have a sample timeline in here, and this is something that you'll want to obviously make sure you work with the planner or someone that's helping you organize the wedding day. This is a very general timeline for a wedding day for an Indian wedding specifically, followed by a reception. And so here I normally have some general time frames. Now, obviously, this is going to be dependent upon what you agreed to with your makeup artist, along with your venue. But generally speaking, bridal party hair and makeup will start roughly 5 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even earlier than that, depending on your timeline. What I always like to do is look back at the time our ceremony is going to start and work roughly 3 hours or 4 hours back behind that. And from a photography point of view, you want to make sure of your ceremony starting roughly, let's just say at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, let's say 11 o'clock, and then we'll make sure that we work our way backwards from that. So you want to have your photographer start at least 3 to 4 hours prior to that. And that's going to give us enough time to make sure we capture preparation shots, we'll capture detail shots, we'll capture you and your fiance, a first look, photo sessions of you guys together, along with your bridal party, your family members. So this is going to provide us enough time to make sure we can capture all of these important moments. So if your photographer arrives right around 7 o'clock, in this guide, I'm going to walk you through what to have ready, where to keep them, so that way we can very quickly and smoothly operate through the day. So your photographer, whether it's myself or whomever you hire, to ensure that they have the right details and heirlooms that they're going to need. And that way we can make sure that we keep this timeline running on schedule. Okay, so general timeline, photographer arrives around 7. And again, you're going to adjust this based on your specific day. We'll then go within 45 minutes to capture individual portraits of yourself and your fiance, which is then going to be followed by your first look. So this time frame here is really just preparation between yourself and the groom. An hour is plenty because we're going to be doing detail shots in the room, assuming everything is set up on time and available on location. And then individual portraits of bride and groom individually within the rooms. And then within an hour and a half of us arriving, let's say roughly around 8:15, we'll then position you guys for a first look and a photo session of the couple or you and your fiance. Right after that, after about a half hour of that, we're going to go into bridal party photos, groomsmen photos, and bridal bridesmaids as well. And then at that point, we want to make sure our ceremony is set up. So that way your photographer has the ability to get the decoration shots that he or she may need. And then we'll then go into our Bharat timing and then also the rest of the rituals here. So this construct in the morning is probably the most important to get right of the entire wedding day because there's so many things happening and a lot of coordination needed within a short amount of time. After the wedding ceremony starts, prior to that, it's going to be your Bharat ceremony and then the actual milni itself between the family and friends. So we'll speak a little bit more about what that is. And then the actual ceremony. And then what I'll do as part of this guide is also walk you through all the individual rituals that are going to take place so you have an understanding of what they all mean from a photography point of view what we're going to be capturing, so that way you know exactly when to look at the camera, when to be a little bit more candid in nature, etc. So that's going to provide you a good reference. Well, after the ceremony ends, we'll then go into family photos. Now, this part is really crucial to get right. You don't want to spend all afternoon taking pictures. As much as that's important to you, we want to get through this in a very time efficient manner. So, working with your bridal party, working with your planner, the venue, the DJ to make sure we're announcing groups up or just getting people as they're available is probably the best way to go about it. After that, we then go into Vidai, your lunch break, and then the afternoon is really where we're going to make sure that we capture detail shots for reception. Now, if we do detail shots in the morning, most photographers don't do another second detail shots. They'd rather spend that time working with a couple to do reception photos in sunset and golden hour. We spend more time on couple photo sessions during this time because there's so many details that we've already captured. You guys are probably the most important, and that's going to make sure that we have enough time in the afternoon to do a reception photo shoot during sunset, during dusk. Okay, so that's really where this time frame of uh, your downtime, doing hair and makeup again, family photos. Now, 4 o'clock might be a little bit early depending on when time your venue opens for the reception, but at least making sure that you have enough time allocated here to ensure the photographer has enough time to do photo sessions in sunset between you and your fiance. We then go into cocktail hour. We go into reception details, doors opening to that reception. Then the rest of the reception program is going to start, such as your grand entrance, speeches, performances, and then obviously open dance floor. And then we also do a sneak away session at the very end, to capture you guys during the nighttime in the ambiance of your venue, which you've spent, I'm sure, a lot of money for. So we'll make sure we want to capture that. Followed by cake cutting, and then the rest of the evening is going to be dancing until the very end. Okay, so this is a very rough, basic timeline. Again, you're going to modify this to your needs. Feel free to grab a screenshot on this so that way you have some sort of structure to work with, or you obviously get a copy of the guide. Let's move right into the next first segment here. So, bride and groom prep. This is really where we want to make sure that all the details that you have available that you want to have documented are available in the rooms. So, brides, that's going to include your dress, and if it's hanging, if it's not hanging, that's something that we'll work to make sure that we capture that the right way. Most times for Indian dresses, those are generally very heavy. They don't hang quite well, but at least some of the heirlooms, family heirlooms, or your shoes, your large necklaces, any pieces of jewelry that are really sentimental to you, want to make sure you set those aside on a table somewhere, so that way when your photographer arrives on site, he has that available and he can quickly start to capture those moments. He's also going to want to capture detail shots of your makeup, so making sure we're getting close-ups of your mascara and just really just the overall makeup for the makeup artist herself. And we'll make sure that we do some of those fancy shots of you in their robe, and then also the groom in his morning outfit, getting dressed. So between all of those different things, making sure we have details prepared, ready on the side, the dress hanging or not hanging. If it's too heavy, then we'll photograph that while it's on you, and then making sure that we're capturing some of these more preparation shots of you yourself, individual portraits, any potential photos of the makeup artist doing some touch-ups on your face for my brides. And then for grooms, having a best man, having a family member there to help him get dressed. So obviously you can see here we have our turban, we have our shoes laid out, and then we have a family member assisting him get dressed. And for brides, we'll capture some portrait shots after you're fully dressed as well. So normally right around this time, at least for us, we tend to move between the bride's room and then the groom's room. We'll check up on each of you, and we'll make sure that everything is running smoothly in the morning. This is probably the most critical part to get right. Next stage is really the first look, and this is not just a couple's first look, but the bridesmaid's first look and the groomsman's first look. This is something that we're seeing trending more often, where our brides and our bridesmaids want to see her bride, their best friend, their family member, in their wedding outfit. So this is something that started to trend more recently. Not mandatory, but something you may want to consider as part of your timeline. Coordinating all this is generally a little chaotic in the morning, in my opinion. But if you have a planner you're working with and you can swing it, by all means, book the time for it. But this is really where we're going to get some really fun photos of you and your bridesmaids, some of their more candid reactions of seeing you in your outfit, and then obviously pictures of you guys all together for just the ladies. And this is really a special, intimate moment. We also do some fun photos here as well. So if groomsmen want to join in, that's also something that we always encourage. But if not, then we then go right into groomsmen first look. So we'll coordinate this where we'll make sure that the groomsmen can see their groom in their wedding outfit. And this is always something that's fun to do. We do some funny photos and then pictures of all our groomsmen together. Okay, so something optional, not mandatory, but something that we definitely want to make sure we take advantage of it if we have the time for it. Next is really the most important. That is your couple's first look. So you and your fiance, or if you're coordinating this event on behalf of a family member, the couple's first look session is the most important, and we'll want to make sure we have at least 30 to 45 minutes set aside for this session. Because this is really where the groom sees his bride in her wedding outfit for the first time during the day. And this is something that most cultures will observe, but if not, then we can do a first look during the ceremony where if the groom is sitting on the mandap, then the bride can walk down the aisle, and that'll be the first time the groom sees his bride. But if not, most couples today do opt for doing a first look directly before the ceremony starts. And it's always a really intimate moment, very emotional in nature, where we'll capture those natural, candid reactions of the couple together. And then also, if we have time for it, we'll do our family photos right after this as well, but not mandatory. So couples first look session, really what to expect here is we'll have a groom set up, we'll have the bride walk up to him, we'll capture more candid reactions of them seeing each other. And right after that, we'll go right into the photo session of the couple together. And that time frame should take roughly around 30 to 45 minutes. As you can see here, we capture some of those detail shots of the in front of the venue, or we'll move around the venue depending on what's scenic in nature. And most times it's going to be outdoors. If it's raining, then we'll obviously pick a site indoors. But that's a really important key aspect to make sure we book enough time for. Couple session, same thing. So right after first look, this is really where we're going to move around the venue, we'll capture any special architecture within the building or outside the building, as you can see here. So always a really fun session, and we recommend at least 45 minutes for this if you can spare it. But really important key part, because these are the types of photos that are going to make it to your wedding album and anything you're going to want to print. So really important we set aside the time for this. After that, now what we didn't show here is really if you have family photos, if all the family's ready, we'll want to do those as well. But if not, the barath is going to be the next immediate thing to focus on. And that's really where the groom is going to then come in a horse or a car, special car. This procession is something that generally the groom and his family are going to come down to the main mandap hall. Generally, it outlines where the groom I'll start over again. So the Bharat is a procession where the groom makes his way to the mandap being the venue, and he's surrounded by family and friends. This is something is really a lot of fun in nature. So if he's got a special car, like potentially a Ferrari or a Corvette, or he's coming on a horse, we'll make sure we capture some of those details. But this is generally something that runs roughly around 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour, depending on how much time you have. You want to obviously coordinate this with your DJ or dole player outside to make sure we have the right sound and everything set up. So these are always generally fun dance photos, and it can roughly last at least an hour, or I'm sorry, half hour, and then up to an hour. Okay. The next step of the Indian wedding is the milni. The milni is where both sides of the family meet. So dad with dad, mom with mom, uncle with uncle, cousin with cousin. Generally, from a photography point of view, we're capturing each of those relationships, and you will then use vermala or a garland and greet one another. The milni is something that is really a convergence of both families meeting for the first time. And there could be some fun with this too, as part of the barat, where the bride's family will dance with the groom's family. After that, we'll then have the puja of the bride's mom welcoming the groom. As you can see here, this is a puja will then happen at the ark outside of the venue itself, and something that we'll coordinate to make sure that this happens quite smoothly. But this is something that, a milni is really important to make sure that we capture all the individual family members that are meeting each other for the first time. A really sentimental moment. Okay. At this stage is really where, from a photography point of view, if we haven't already captured this early on in the day, the mandap ceremony details should be ready by now. Obviously, before guests start making their way to the ceremony hall, all the stage decorations, all the chairs, the memory tables, the outside uh, table setup should all be prepared. So, from a photography point of view, we're normally capturing these types of photos before the barat starts, but this is really the last call for any of those final details before the actual ceremony starts, and something that you want to make sure that you work with your decorator very closely on to ensure it happens smoothly. Ganesh Puja, really just a puja that the priest is going to conduct. That's really to remove all the obstacles from the ceremony and to bless the couple and the family members before the actual ceremony starts. This is a really sentimental puja that's going to be conducted by your priest. And normally the bride's parents are sitting on stage at that point before the groom starts to make his way to the stage. Once that happens, and then normally right around this time is when the Kanya Agaman happens, which is the bride's entrance. So we had the Ganesh Puja, the groom is already on stage with the bride's parents, you conduct the puja, and then shortly thereafter that, the Kanya Agaman is where the bride makes her way to the stage, and that is where you'll notice that she's going to be surrounded by her uncles, her aunts, any family members. This can be a sentimental moment as well, and something that we want to make sure that we capture correctly, um, it's a really key moment of a Hindu wedding. Okay, so let's start making our way down the reveal. So this is the traditional version of a first look. The reveal is really where there's a curtain that hides the groom's face, and this is in Indian tradition is where the couple would have seen each other for the first time. Now we're in the year 2024. I don't think any of us really do this anymore, but it still honors that old culture and that old tradition for the bride and groom. So you'll notice that the groom is going to have a cloth covering his face, and the bride's going to make her way from this to the stage, sitting down, and then that curtain is going to drop, and it's always a nice reaction that we get from both sides, mainly the groom. So that's what we call the reveal. Let's keep going down the Varmala. So the Varmala is where there's an exchange of garlands between the couple. So flowers that are on a string. That's something that allows us to formally start the ceremony itself. So the bride and groom are then going to greet each other with the Varmala ceremony, and that's an exchange of garlands with one another on stage. Typically, right around this time is when we're going to want to make sure that we capture a more formal shot. So from our point of view, we would then direct the couple towards us to get one shot. This is a really key moment in the Hindu wedding, known as the Varmala ritual or Jaimala, which marks the beginning of the Hindu wedding. After we move past that, this is the Kanyadan, and that is really where the bride's given away by her father to the groom. You'll notice that there is a joining of the hands, there's rice, there's potentially a banana leaf, there's a coconut on the hand, and then that's really where the hands are going to be blessed by the parents, and the bride's going to be given away to the groom. This is really a symbolic ritual in Hindu weddings, and something that's really, really important to make sure that is captured correctly. After that, after the sacred water is poured, is when we then start to move into the next part of the ceremony, which is called a Viva Homa. And you'll notice that there's a sacred fire that's going to be lit in front of the couple, and that is where we will ensure that there's servings or offerings made to that fire, potentially ghee, sand, and those are going to be things that you're going to be guided on by your priest to ensure that the fire stays well lit and if not gross, to signify the the ritual and the purity of the Hindu ceremony. After that, the Viva Homa is going to happen for a period of time. I've seen some priests do this pretty quite a couple of times until that fire has the ability to grow. From there, we're going to move into Laja Homam, which is really where the offering of the plus fry from the couple is offered to that fire. Typically, the bride and groom are going to be accompanied by immediate family members, potentially the bride's brother or immediate family members, where the family is going to offer offerings to the bride and groom, who are then going to make that offering to the fire, and that's going to provide blessing of the marriage and signify the start of their relationship together. After the Laja Homam concludes, you'll notice that there's a Mangolfera ceremony. Mangolfera is really where the bride and groom will circle the fire. And depending on the priest, it may be 4 times, maybe 7 times. Each of them are going to have a significant meaning, and the priest will then provide you that meaning. From here is where you'll notice that typically the groom will lead first, and followed by the bride. At the last stage or the last circling, the groom will lead the I'm sorry, the bride will lead the groom, and then they will race to see who sits down first. And that is a fun way of saying who's going to lead the home or be the owner or control the home. So it's always a fun ruler of the household type of play where the groom and bride are going to try to rush to that seat, and it's always a really intimate moment. And you're going to notice that there's a lot of cheering, a lot of family members that are going to be providing flower petals and blessings to the couple as they're making their way around the Habankun. The Mongol Farah ceremony is a really intimate and really emotional moment as well. Okay, let's continue on to Satapati. So this is really the 7 steps or 7 vows that you and your fiance are going to make towards one another. You'll notice that there's a couple of stones that are then placed on the mandap stage. And the priest is then going to ask you to put your big toe on each of those stage and then, I'm sorry, on each of those stones, and then kick those stones off of the stage. Satapati is roughly around 7 steps, and each of those are going to be reciting different vows to one another, and that you'll be obviously guided by your priest as part of that ceremony. Okay, Mangal Sutra. So this is a necklace that the groom is going to tie on the bride's around her neck. It's a really significant moment for the bride and the groom as part of the ceremony, something that signifies her status as a married woman. As part of the ceremony as well, there's also what's called the sindoor ceremony, where the bride has a marking of red powder on her forehead. So between the Mangalsutra and the sindoor, two significant key moments of a Hindu wedding that signifies a married woman and tying of the knot. Really key moment to make sure that's something that you want to make sure gets captured correctly. After that, you'll have a ring exchange. So, compared to normal in American tradition, ring exchanges are something that the Hindu ceremony also honors as well. So, just like a normal American ceremony, the bride and groom are going to exchange wedding bands or rings on stage. Now, you may be seated, you may be proposing like this gentleman is here. But this is something that's similar to many other wedding traditions. So the exchange of the rings happens typically right after the Mangal Sutra, if you guys are observing that. Katsar Bakshan. So typically the bride and groom are fasting during the wedding day. So this is the first time they're going to be eating. And the groom typically is going to make offerings or of sweets to his bride. And normally this is done a couple of times, I think at least 3 to 4 times. But generally the Katsar Bakshan is really where it's a symbolic gesture of exchanging sweets between the couple. And this represents their first meal together as married husband and wife. Okay, Ashirvad, this is really where blessings are taken from the parents or grandparents. So typically what happens is the parents of the bride, the parents of the groom will then touch their feet. Always a significant moment that you want to make sure is captured correctly. Typically, if you have bridal or grandparents that are nearby sitting either outside watching the ceremony in the main around where the guests are sitting, you want to make your way down to ask for blessings from them as well. So Ashirvad, a crucial part of the Hindu wedding that asks for blessings from both sets of parents after the ceremony concludes. Next up, we have the Juta Chupai, and that is a ceremony that can get quite contentious depending on how aggressive your bridal party is. So the Juta Chupai normally signifies when the bride side of the family will steal the shoes from the groom. Now, typically shoes are not required. I shouldn't say not required. They're not allowed really on the mandap stage. So chances are those shoes have been stolen by the bride side of the family. And in order for the groom to take away the bride, generally he's going to notice that, well, where did my shoes go? So the bridal party normally asks for ransom. They ask for money in order to give the shoes back to the groom, so that way he can then take away the bride. So this is normally a negotiation. It can take some time for both sides to agree on how much is a fair amount. But you'll notice here that the bridal party, depending on how aggressive they are, might be a pretty interesting showdown. Okay, so that's the juice that you buy. As we move down to the family formal session, this is typically where we will ask the couple if they've already left the mandap to come back to the mandap to do our family formal session. Typically, we will then prioritize first our VIPs, so both sets of parents, the grandparents, immediate family members. That's who we'll start off with first. Now, what we do is highly recommend that you work with the planner to have a list of photos. Now, in our personal experience, generally we're always waiting for one or two people to be found. Sometimes they're eating, sometimes they're in the bathroom. My personal recommendation is focus on the VIPs, your both sets of parents, your siblings, anyone who's important, your bridal party, and then start to work your way to see who's available. If you have immediate family or other friends that are ready and available, by all means, create a very easy way for them to come up on the stage, take a photo with you, and very easily be able to exit the stage. And so you'll notice that people will start to form a line. And as quickly as we can efficiently get through this process, the better it will be for all. So that way you're not worn out by just taking pictures. Family formal sessions are typically something you want to coordinate with your venue to make sure that the site of where the photos are taking place is clean. We don't have any distracting backgrounds, and then also work with the DJ to make announcements so that way if people are aware that family formals are going to start. And if you have a planner, naturally work with them to ensure that they can coordinate getting those groups ready if you do have a list you're working with. Okay, so that's your family formal session. You'll notice here that if we did not already cover some of these family formal sessions prior in the morning, then we'll then use this time to capture that as well. Okay, so moving on to the Vidai. So the Vidai ceremony is where the bride's going to depart from her family. It's always an emotional moment. Typically, there's a car parked outside, and that's going to have potentially just married or some signs on it. But the priest is going to be the one to initiate this as a procession, leaving from the mandap hall down to the car outdoors. So typically speaking, this signifies when the bride leaves her home. So it's always an emotional moment. And you'll notice here that our bride here is quite emotional and something that should be documented correctly by your photographer. Okay, let's make sure we move down to the reception change. So normally at this point, before we get to reception change, there is a break. So utilize this time to work with your makeup artist to then turn over your next outfit for the reception. And then after you guys are fully ready, we'll then go into a photo session of your reception outfits. Now, we don't do another prep session per se, so we spend more time doing some various poses, something more moody in nature, something a little bit more classy in nature. So reception change is where we have a lot of fun as part of this photo session. It's unlike what we do in the morning because the morning typically there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of different things that are happening at the same time, coordination. So what I see with my couples is in the morning they're in a different mindset versus a reception after all the formalities are done. The reception is something that we're going to have a lot of time to celebrate with your family and friends. It's not a lot more of a relaxed atmosphere. So we get a lot of our best photos during this time itself. So we'll go into a photo shoot during sunset. It always adds a nice flair to your images. Reception details. So the banquet hall should be fully available. So at this point, you want to make sure your photographer is capturing the stage decorations, the cake table, the centerpieces, memory tables, any potential important table setups that are already set up outside the venue, along with inside the venue, and potentially some shoot throughs as well. So this is really where the decorations should be fully documented by your photographer. Ensure that you have these for keepsake. Okay, your standard reception itinerary. So what we typically do is this is how we normally structure our reception itinerary. Now, if we haven't already done a photo of the couple in front of the stage, it's always important that we do that before we open up the dance. I'm sorry, before we open up the actual doors to allow folks from cocktail hour to come into the venue. You'll notice that typically it's always grand entrance. You can go right into a first dance as the attention's already on you. If you want to then start with speeches or even have cake cutting before that, typically the venue may want to cut the cake early depending on how long it takes them to cut pieces for your guests. So offering the ability to do that early on is always something we recommend, but not mandatory. Speeches, mother son dance, father daughter dance, and then any performances you may be having. So This is a general obviously a general timeline for your reception. Yours may change accordingly, but grand entrance, going into first dance, you can either open up dinner or appetizers. While that's happening, have your speeches. So best man toast, maid of honor toast, any other family members that would like to say something on your behalf. And then going into your father daughter, mother son dance, and then cake cutting if you're not doing it already earlier. And then performances. And then that energy from the performances is then going to lead to opening up the dance floor to get the rest of the crowd in. So that's something that we always like to see. So that way we can keep the energy high in the room. And then obviously you guys are going to enjoy the dancing with your family and friends once they make their way to the stages. Okay. So from here, yeah. So just like we mentioned, the performances is something that you want to make sure that happens before the dance party is open. So that kind of gets the energy of the room up. And from a photography point of view, we're always capturing zoomed in shots, really tight shots of the family. And then from a video point of view, is something that we really highly make sure we capture from various angles as well. At this point, we have about another hour, hour and a half, so we allow you to enjoy the time you have with your family and friends. And then we always like to encourage a sneak away session. So if you have a venue that has a really great outdoor area, a really nice ambient vibe outside, we highly recommend you take advantage of that. We will then plan these shoots on your behalf so we know exactly where we're going to take you and what shots to put you in. So that way we try to keep the time very quick and concise so that way you have the ability to go back to your reception and enjoy your party. We don't want to spend all night taking photos. So what we'll do is we'll make sure we plan those shots in advance. We'll pull you for about 20 minutes, bring you outside. Here's pose number one, pose number two, pose number three, and then we'll make sure that we capture that quickly and allow you to get back to your dance party. Okay, so always something that we recommend. And as part of this as well, normally if we haven't already covered your reception rings, wedding bands, we'll normally ask to borrow that for about 10 minutes or so. And we promise we're not robbing you. Um, Normally, this is when we have a little more time in the day to make sure we can capture some of those really close macro shots of rings. Not in the guide here, but it's just something to be aware of, something to ask your photographer. Okay, so in this video, we did go through a sample timeline of a wedding day, how you may want to think about structuring the day. Feel free to utilize our resource guide we'll provide to you as part of this tutorial, so you know exactly how to plan your wedding day, structure it, work with your makeup artist, your decorator, other vendors, the venues, make sure you can maximize photography coverage for your important day. All right. Any questions you have, feel free to let us know. We'd be more than happy to support. If not, we'll see you soon and congratulations.